What careers seem promising but are actually traps that people consistently waste their education opportunities on, either due to oversaturation or misconception? Conversely, what are some careers that are often overlooked but unexpectedly lucrative? Probably about any kind of artist, but in particular 3D, CG, artist. Tons of art schools popped up selling degrees to be a video game artist or a chance to be an animator at Disney or something. Ended up oversaturating the market with low quality portfolios that had no chance of ever getting into a major studio. I knew a Disney studio artist. He hated it. He said it was basically tons of artists in a room drawing up a concept in their own way, then the higher ups would come down, pick the best looking one, take it back up and have someone else run with this person's original idea. Sucked the love out of the process for him. Trap. Veterinarian. Debt of MD but fraction of the salary. Works if you don't have to pay for college and vet school, but not really logical if you do. Not to mention the skyrocketing rates of mental health issues and suicide. Not unexpectedly lucrative but overlooked. Mining engineering. Last year Australia graduated only 23 of them. The industry is screaming for them. A graduate job is sitting at 110k, then the sky is the limit. I'm currently 220k odd and having an interview about an expat job for 250k USD after tax. Finished my BS in geology last year. Still looking for work. Masters in mining engineering is sounding pretty good right now. Painting houses. Honestly, the market is constantly saturated with cheap workers, so if you can get a reputation for quality work you can make a pretty penny. I do beekeeping, and while I find it very rewarding, it seems like a growing trend of a trap. There have been a ton of people who want to get into it, probably spend like $400 on equipment bees and are done with it after 2 years. You could buy a ton of honey for that. Plus hobby beekeepers are worrisome because if they don't treat their bees properly they can be a vector for disease. I wouldn't consider any hobby a trap. Sure, they can get expensive, but it's not like getting stuck in a dead-end job where you can't stop because you have to do it to survive. The biggest scam is being a qualified librarian. For terrible pay, organizations want you to have a flipping master's in library science. If the jobs paid more, it would make sense, but it's absolutely ridiculous. Even worse, because you can sneak your way into being a librarian other ways and still be paid what qualified people are paid. There are always exceptions. Came here to say this. I am in so much student debt, and librarians make so little. I like my job, but I regret so much. Trap. Film and TV. Constant fear of job loss. Marriages never survive. The hours are bad. Stress is high, and many colleagues are unbearable self-important morons who consider themselves very special artistic geniuses because they hung lights on Freddy Got Fingered or directed an episode of some house flipping show. Better. Public sector communications. Great pay, good pension and manageable workload. A bit dull. Not very creative. Lots of frustrating bureaucracy and indecision. But you can find pockets of interesting people and work a few times a year. It can also be meaningful and impactful work depending where you are. Having come from the private sector, what the public sector consider crazy busy is quite light. Overlooked. Water treatment field. Very lucrative field considering literally every person and business uses it. Requirements for becoming a treatment operator differ by state but typically require taking some classes and getting a license, then on-job training. Many places will hire you as an operator in training and pay for your classes while you learn the system. Starting pay in my area in AR is $15 HR with yearly increases. If I could go back I would have started after high school instead of going to college. Carpentry seems to be good. I know 2 families where the dad is a carpenter. One is specialized in doing structural work like wooden beams for house roofs and so on. The other combined it with a love for art history and went into the restoration of antique furniture. Both are their own boss. Both are financially stable, own their own houses, provide their families, etc. When you have enough money saved up, you can also very effectively flip houses, because you can do so much of the work on your own. Trades work in general are pretty awesome if you go after a red seal. I have tons of tradespeople in my family. Carpentry, plumbing, electrical, and they all make really good coin on it. Grass taxonomists are almost entirely unheard of. and very well paid. I read that as taxidermist, which made for a very confusing 30 seconds. My friend is a vet tech. You go to school because you want to help animals. You come out starting at $13 an hour, but you can make significantly more testing on animals. What a fucked up choice to have to make. $13 HR is what I made as a vet assistant at the beginning of 2021. It's insane that your friend who is licensed is making roughly the same money I make as an unlicensed vet assistant. Before COVID I was making £500 a day chasing rodents out of restaurants. You need some basic DIY skills and common sense. There's probably a lot more pay if you go self-employed and are good at marketing. Working as an EMT or paramedic. The work is rewarding, but most companies are private and pay dog crap. Most of your money will be made on overtime, which is mostly forced due to understaffing. I did it for 6 years and completely burned out due to being overworked. Now getting picked up by an FD or a state city run EMS program is different and better in my opinion, but most people get stuck at a private company for too long. I'm an EMT. Can confirm this. My FD pay is a lot better than stories I've heard about most private companies. Cough. After reading through this thread, I'm gonna conclude all jobs are traps. All jobs are traps until you can't move up and trap other people. A lot of non-profits rely on your desire to do meaningful work to get away with some pretty exploitative labor practices. I'm sure it depends though, because that's a really broad category. I've worked for small non-profits. You have to really have a love for the organization and what it does in order to stay happy doing it. The pay certainly isn't satisfying. The trap. Arts students of any sort. I got a bachelor plus masters, but it don't mean crap cause the paper itself is worthless. And in most art schools you're basically guaranteed to get your paper. There's no "nah, you're not good enough to achieve it." You just do. You're almost buying it at this point. Unless you're actually super talented and worked your butt off to have a high skill level and are constantly working and posting, you might as well use your diploma as toilet paper. It's not easy either. You don't just draw like 95% of the people think and become famous. The pro of it, furry P. Just draw furry P. You don't even need to be really good as long as you accept a wide berth of fetish stuff to draw. It pays insanely well, and I've seen artists quit better jobs to settle for this instead because of how much easier, less stressful and carefree drawing inflation diaper cubs was. I myself am currently debating to take up my markers again and just start doing furry stuff on the side for the extra pocket change. I've seen and considered this TBH. I have a friend who draws furry P, like the weirdest crap. 2 dong BDSM, stuff like that, but he does get lots of money. Law in Australia. Don't do what I did and study law in this country. I graduated with distinction average grades, and in this oversaturated market I wish I could get those hours from the library back. The legal field is fricked in this country. The job market is so saturated, and even if you get hired it's for peanuts. Law Australia. Any video game career. I wouldn't say any specialized degree is a waste, but it's completely unnecessary. Jobs are super competitive, so breaking in out experience is hard, and there's more and more candidates every year. One company I worked for said they rejected 5,000 resumes for a position they posted. If you are talented to get a job, you're talented enough to make 2x more outside gaming. Stress, burnout, and divorce are super common. Teaching in university college. You have to do a PhD minimum and consistently churn out new research materials. You'd have invested over a decade getting all the degrees, but jobs are scarce, so you end up being a temporary faculty for a few more years, doing the same or more amount of work for a fraction of the pay. At least, this is how it is in my country. Don't be a chef. If you insist on being a chef, don't go to culinary school. It's a waste of time and nothing you learn translates into real-world kitchen knowledge. If you only plan to work in a restaurant, don't go to culinary school. The only reason you would go is connections to higher-end places. Those places usually go to people with actual professional experience though. Don't be fooled into thinking that just because it's fine dining that they'll treat you better. I've worked in fine dining and in fast casual. They both pay like crap and offer no benefits. In fact, fine dining actually pays less a lot of the time because of their stupid contracts. You're basically there for the honor of working there. Last time I worked fine dining I almost committed suicide in the walk-in. They knew and sent me home instead of calling a 5,150. Thankfully, someone was home to stop me from hurting myself. There's corporate, but it's boring as crap and it's typically just as bad as a mom and pop. I know from experience. They have HR. But who do you go to when it's the HR person that's sexually harassing you or berating you? There's so much I hate about this industry now. The drugs, the drinking, the sexual harassment, the discrimination, the pay, the lack of benefits, the hours. Oh god, the hours. They'll either work you just under full time so they don't have to provide benefits, or if your salary you'll work like 60 plus a week and they'll find a way to not pay you overtime. They always find a way to screw you out of your overtime, or even your lunch break. I've lost count of the amount of times I've worked through my lunch break. Oh, and you're not allowed to make your own food until after you clock out for your lunch break. You better hope there isn't a sudden rush, because your food will be used for an order. Sometimes I would get no food because of this. I'm not even going to get started on being a cook during COVID. It was horrible. It wasn't what made me quit though. What made me throw in the towel was after COVID. I was excited to go back to work, but then I saw what every restaurant was offering. No increase in pay, no increase in benefits, and worse hours and workload because of the labor shortage. I just didn't see the point. If a freaking apocalypse isn't going to change anything, then nothing will. I decided a little over a month ago that I'm done. I'm going back to school to get a real degree and a real job. Remember, for every Thomas Keller, there's 1,000 lowly line cooks destroying their bodies just to barely scrape by. TLDR. Don't be a chef or a cook. It sucks. The whole restaurant industry is busted. Your options are generally places with exciting food, big crap moral pay management, or boring menus with better pay moral benefits. After cooking for 12-13 years I pivoted to baking, and other than generally being in bed by 8 PM, it's a much better career. Higher academia, especially in the Anglosphere. For many decades, the idea of furthering one's education was promoted and culturally instilled on generations. At the same time, the price of higher education rose and rose. I went to university in Germany, so my education was completely free, but I've been teaching medicine and English at a very prominent German university for 3 semesters and I'm planning to give it up to teach at a kindergarten. Myself and people in my position at a university are working 60-70 weeks for little more than minimum wage. German minimum wage is the equivalent of $12. I can't even imagine doing that while also being in debt to a university. While I get frustrated with the rise in anti-intellectualism and I went to the University of Life attitude compounded by the false belief that people with degrees look down on those who don't. False from my experience at least. I gotta say, if you want a job that pays well and doesn't follow you home, avoiding university is perfectly valid. Sometimes I think my philosophy degree, but then it weirdly became super handy when I entered business. You never know. I think these days it's more about finding ways to apply your knowledge and be creative. Humanities degrees are unironically fantastic as long as you never, ever go into academia ever. Any city, state, county, federal job that is union. Get on the gravy train young, and when the opportunity arises, and it will, take the new job advancement. The pay rate usually has generous raises and good benefit plans. You can enjoy a good life while you're working and a great retirement. This is absolutely true, especially if it's a federal position. I started my federal career at the literal bottom of the pay scales at 25 and now I'm north of GS14 wages. I'll never be ultra wealthy, but frankly, between my pension and my thrift savings plan, equivalent to a 401k, I could retire at 55 if I really wanted. I won't, but it's nice to have the option. Trap. Biotech and biotechnology. Long hours, low pay. Most of the work is extremely dull and monotonous relative to what I thought science was. Not much in the way of transferable skills. So true. My professor on the first day of my biomedical degree said, welcome to 3 years of education that you will use to babysit a machine 100 times more intelligent than you for the first 5 years of your career until anyone will give a dang about what you say or think in the field, lol. Theater. Unless you are already wealthy and know people in a big city that can get you a position in a company everyone wants in. Much competition, low pay, bad hours, lots of travel and basically begging for work. I could say more about the things that have disappointed me. There has been some fun moments and good people, but I wish I would have gotten a degree in something useful. Putting theater design production major on our application has never helped me. Journalist. I started bartending in college to pay for the degree. Got it. I'm still a bartender. You don't make money writing until you die, or unless you frick your boss. I had no interest in television news, so that was out. Plus, I live in DC. I got tired of the grind real quick. The sad thing is that the audience readers hate the way media is today, but the people who are super passionate about the field and could actually change things are getting burnout and leaving journalism in droves. It's hard to know how things will change when new talent is gutted in a few years. Meanwhile, the cable news and newspaper old guards are keeping their healthy six-figure jobs. I'm gonna be the one to shoot the Reddit building trades plane down and say men are trades and always that great. My whole family were electricians and plumbers, good ones, and they usually topped out in the 50k range for a mid-sized southern town. The ones who did make bank were busy all the time. I just lost a cousin to addiction fueled by his career, an uncle who died of a heart attack at 47, a whole slew of family members with joint and muscle problems. I think the only one who's doing well financially and physically is my other uncle, who started working in the supply side and sells pipes and wires to factories. Trap. Specialized masters in international relations or other extremely niche public service roles when you don't have work experience. Unless you're already employed in a role that requires those skills, they are really only for academics, yet they advertise as helping you get into international public service. Source: hire for an extremely competitive grad program for a government agency that includes lots of international travel. We will hire the undergrad who has stories of conflict resolution delivering pizzas to sea kids over a specialized master's whose examples all involve group assignments. Most of our hires come from internal sources too, so your chances are overwhelmingly better if you work in our call center for 6 months than apply instead of doing a specialized master's. Mayo, I'm graduating from the top French politics school, not ENA, also not French national, and I have no intention working for my shit-ass government anymore. I don't even know what could I do in the private sector with my degree that matches my education as a fresh graduate. I'm just reading all these responses and I've come to the conclusion that work just sucks in general. I can't think of one job you can truly say is great to have. Trap. Therapist, counselor. Surprisingly lucrative. School psychologist. If you're interested in being a school psych, feel free to reach out, especially if you are an undergrad psych major. Radiography. It's not well known and short staffed really. Radiographers are in mad demand and earn quite okay across countries. Agree. Pay is good. Currently short staffed. Trap. Stripper. Overlooked. Strip club staff. I know you don't need a degree, but if I had $1 for every girl that thought stripping was it. Wait, I do have $1 for every girl. Cause I stayed on the staff side. You have more responsibility than dancing, but if you get some management or accounting or business training, you can move right up to management quickly. Most people running a club do not have a formal education. They're just doing what seems best, which can turn into who knows what. If you are professional, sober, not trying to sleep with the girls, and competent in the actual work, you're a unicorn. The hours are crazy and people are crazy, but the money is great, and I feel like it's so much more honest than a lot of corporate BS I sat through in vanilla jobs. A really well run club is a beautiful thing. Also the trades and other service work like hairdressers and house cleaners. You can make right under 6 figures if you work for yourself and can handle people well. These are both hard on the lungs though over time if you don't mask and ventilate well when working with chemicals. Overlooked. Mining engineer. Basically worldwide there aren't enough graduates in this field given the current boom. In Australia we were basically poaching all the grads from overseas that we could, though obviously COVID has put a brake on that presently. Coal mining is slowly dying worldwide both for environmental and economic reasons, so I would recommend going to a university mining school that focuses more on metalliferous mining. I've never worked in coal, but my impression was it's generally technically boring anyway. The lack of graduates is probably because only some regions of the world have a very big mining industry while others don't have one at all. My country has very few mining operations, so everyone who graduates ends up crossing the Atlantic Ocean and going to South America like Chile's lithium mines and things like that. Trap teacher. Yeah, it's nice to have summers off, but working 7 AM to 7 PM every day plus a few hours on the weekends just to make 50k a year. Not to mention dealing with a bunch of whiny parents that don't give a crap about their child's education. Source: teacher. Teaching. I was told there's a high demand for teachers when I was in college, and when I finally found a job, the hiring admin told me I was going to teach a class I had zero experience schooling in. I wasn't about to decline my first real teaching job, so I said yes. At that time, my wife and I had just had our first son, so I declined the teacher induction program. Basically where the district provides you a mentor to help you learn as you go, but this translates to essentially even more paperwork and essays as a first year teacher, so I said no thank you. Fast forward to February, I get called into admin's office and I'm told they are not renewing my contract. Basically I am now fired. Though I did nothing wrong or illegal, they did not give a reason for letting me go at the time. The only silver lining was I was allowed to finish the school year and complete my initial contract. All the work, prep, refining, meetings, student follow-up, discipline issues, all of it was just gone in an instant. Huge waste of time if you don't have proper support at your school and admin lets the kids get away with all kinds of crap. That being said, I hope to hear back from a new school in about 3 days. Fingers crossed it's better than before. Good luck. I hope you get it. Trap pilot. You have to take on $150k debt to train. There's oversupply of pilots in the West, and that was pre-COVID. So you generally end up at a crappy low-cost carrier earning surprisingly little and paying back that debt. You start off with little control over your hours and holidays. You compete with other pilots for the most attractive bases. Contracts are very one-sided and redundancies are fairly common. It was a pretty sweet career for a while, and senior pilots still enjoy a lot of benefits. But to me, it just looked like a multi-decade grind of shift work and poor pay in some crap corner of the continent. Information technology. It's less that you can't find work, but you never find work at your level, and everywhere I've ever worked, outside of the military wherein I got experience doing incredibly higher level engineering work, has people who only half but know what they are doing. We are talking mistakes that someone on the lower levels of IT should be making. The jobs you then wind up getting will have bosses getting angry at you over things you couldn't possibly know, like how the network is structured, while at the same time refusing to give you network maps. The amount of things I've had to figure out by myself, just to ask the people who actually manage the system to do them is staggering. Like click for click instructions sometimes, and you get one thing slightly wrong and they crap on you. Meanwhile management is hyper focused on something stupid that won't work. Math stats degrees make it easier to get financial support through scholarships since there isn't much competition and you don't have to pay for your PhD, plus you get a stipend. Pretty great if you are good at critical thinking. From there you can go into various well-paying fields. My friend got a degree in math and is now working at a startup as a data scientist, making 6 figures out of college. Overlooked. Insurance broking underwriting. Slightly less pay than other financial services, but much better quality of life, social hours, and encouragement to network and socialize. Better in bigger cities for serious firms. I started at the United States Post Office in 1993. I knew I would have a good retirement but never thought we would be so well off. My wife worked there also. I loved my job. I retired last year and moved to Germany where my wife's family lives. Dream come true. Let's face it, a lot of PPL go to college and into fields they don't have the aptitude or niche for, but there's only one way to find that out, and that's to try. The question at that point is, what do you do when it doesn't work out? That's the hard bit. Trap structural engineering, the stress responsibility is not worth the pay. If you design something and it falls down, it's on you. The expected hours are awful, so that you can deliver projects on time. Plus you're expected to do a lot of the drawing work yourself now rather than having a draughtsperson covering that for you. No necessarily lucrative, but surprisingly enjoyable. Pizza delivery driver, clear expectations and instructions. 1. I expect you to take this order to this address. 2. Tell me when you're on your way back. 3. Come back. 4. Rinse and repeat. Nice plus is that most people are happy to see you too. The tips haven't been great while I've been doing it, but I get to listen to my audiobooks and the roads are usually quite quiet while I'm doing it. Corrections officer. The pay is okay, and the training is alright, but the hiring process takes a year, and when you're in, the jails are always broken. Anyone above the first tier doesn't do any work. They just tell you to do it, but you're already doing everything else. You are constantly being degraded or threatened or actually attacked. Even when you're trying to get the inmates what they need, they throw pee on you, spit on you, throw food on you, flood the toilets so the floors are almost always wet and gross. They find ways to set the blocks on fire, and when you defend yourself because they jumped you, an investigation is launched. As the bottom of the totem pole, you have no way of changing anything. Suggestions are never heard, but the higher ups don't look at how bad things are now. And good luck sitting down to eat or having a moment to use the restroom at all on your 12-17 hour shift. There is so much wrong with it, but somebody has to do it. While you don't have to go to college, they prefer it, but it doesn't help much. And then there's the several weeks of training that consist of corporals using the sink or swim method of teaching and borderline haze you when you don't immediately know what to do. Oh, and you can't forget that the road deputies don't respect you, and people see the uniform and hate you too. It is crap from every direction, and in some cases, it's literal crap from the inmates. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.